3, 2, 1. What's going on, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. My name is Ash, and here is today's comic. Now, first and foremost, I need to give a shout out to an old friend of the show. You may remember if you've been watching me for a long time, Sergeant Bats. This was a gift from Sergeant Bats. I believe he now goes under the alias MAGA Bats. You can catch him around on Twitter and so forth. He might pop down in the comments. But he gifted me this comic digitally to read, as he's been wont to do on several occasions. He's the reason I read Daredevil still today, because he gifted me the first reissues, and I read them, and I loved them, and then they made it on my pull list. So I try to make it a point, if anyone gifts me a comic, to do a review of it. That seems only fair. So this he gave me a couple weeks back. I've been busy. I've lost track of things. I procrastinate. There's various excuses I could give. So sorry this isn't sooner. Here's my review of Iron Fist, Heart of the Dragon. First things first, I often criticize Marvel Comics, modern Marvel Comics. I'm a big fan of the old school stuff. Marvel's what got me into comics. But the modern stuff is usually premium garbage. And I don't use premium in a good way. Marvel, just because of various factors and things that have gone on, it's too long for this video, has found themselves in a situation where they can't even afford to pay good writers and good artists anymore. It's rare. Once in a while, they seem to splurge on things that doesn't make sense, but it's rare. So when a book like Iron Fist comes out, which is, let's face it, he's kind of a D-list character. Even Disney, even though they had a Netflix show, Disney doesn't want to use Iron Fist in the MCU verse. Like, they want to use Shang-Chi, which is a character that's been out of circulation forever. You have Iron Fist, which at least people know he's tied into Luke. I can't fathom it. If I was Kevin Feige, I'd be leaving Shang-Chi in the cutting room floor. However, we all know that Shang-Chi has an ethnic background that pushes an agenda, whereas Danny Rand absolutely is not. He's the opposite. So maybe there's something in there. I'm not going to make any accusations. But here we got, I think it's Philip Tan is the name. I'm not super familiar with his work. I know he's one of the better modern artists. This is a good cover. It's striking. I like the coloring, really helps sell it. The dragon coming out of the fist. If you are interested in Iron Fist, this is a good first issue cover to me. I think first issues are just there to be like, oh, should I? And here's the feature of the character looking cool, because that's why you're going to invest in the book, because of this guy right here. So pretty well done. We got an in memoriam from Mike Hobson, who I don't really know. Here's a write-up of the stuff that he did. Here's a nice picture of him talking to the greatest of all time editor-in-chief, Jim Shooter. Striking that Marvel would actually put Jim Shooter in a picture these days. But rest in peace, Mike Hobson. And let's see, Iron Fist, Heart of the Dragon. So here we go. It's Larry Hama and David Wachter. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yeah, Philip Tan, I did get the name right. Of course, there's many different covers. As you can see, there's a million names for the cover. There's more credits for cover artists these days than there is for the entire comic, because that's the business. It's a dying industry, and they're just like floundering, trying to stay afloat. So they try to do every gimmick they can. So the book opens up. It's in Manhattan. So why can't Gork and I go with you? Because Fu has been tinkering with the gate, and we don't know if it'll work exactly right. And don't you always have a lot of fun when Uncle Luke sits for you at pay? And so I'm not going to continue to read this. this is kind of interesting. It starts off a little, I'm not sure. Again, I have preconceptions because of modern Marvel comics, and when a comic opens up in a domesticated setting like this, I start rolling my eyes and going, oh, all right. We get to see Luke Cage relegated to just Uncle Luke. He's just a big softy. Now here, normally I would complain about that, but here it works because, number one, even the most masculine of men, typically, it's not unexpected when they're in the presence of a little girl, like a little girl, preteen, prepubescent type, just young, single digits age little girl, men soften up. There's something instinctual in there, and that we just do. So Luke Cage's behavior here actually works for me because of pay. Now, I don't really know Iron Fist. I'm not an Iron Fist reader. Some people watching this video may be diehard Iron Fist people and know all the lore and be like, you don't know what you're talking about. And I readily admit that. So my review is coming from the perspective of someone that's been reading comics for a long time, knows the medium, but is not necessarily an expert on the character. And that's an important thing. You shouldn't have to be a 30-year comic scholar of Iron Fist to appreciate a comic book, right? It should be able to, a kid go, hypothetically, it doesn't exist anymore, but go to the spinner rack, pick up the book, yay, I like this book, right? That's how I approach comics, at least from a critical perspective, typically. Especially if it's a Marvel comic. This is aimed for kids. The number one thing that I can say about this book is that it succeeds in spades on that. You don't have to know anything about Iron Fist to open this book and enjoy it. You don't have to be even a Marvel Comics guru or anything. You can literally just pick this book up and go. Larry Hama is an industry veteran. He's never been one that I've gravitated towards because the books he wrote, such as like G.I. Joe, weren't really for me. I had nothing against them. They were just a different cup of tea. Ironically, I kind of find myself interested in checking out old G.I. Joes nowadays, but that's beside the point. So here, Larry shows off his prowess as a veteran writer of old school comics through skill and discipline. He's using fundamentals to tell a story rather than some sort of visionary writing talent. I don't see that here. And as such, the comic's not blowing me away. But what it is doing is really impressing me because modern comics, especially as far as the big two are concerned, have so far strayed away from that. That old school, you saw Jim Shooter in the picture. That's my era of comics. And comics back then had standards that they had to meet, both in writing and in art. And there were certain fundamentals. There was the Marvel way of doing comics. And if you could not reach that level, then you weren't good enough to work for the company. These days, they throw all sorts of weirdos, and they you look like the character. You want to write the comic? Well, you're like, what are you doing? And so many books are atrocious. And when you read a book like this that Larry Hama is writing, like I said, it's not blowing me away with creative vision, but the fundamentals of writing and having a good plot, focusing on the characters at the right time, and making it interesting keeps me engaged. And furthermore, when I read a comic these days, I pick up a Marvel comic and I go, it's just not for me. My first instinct should be, I could give it to a kid. What if I donated a stack of comics to a children's hospital or something like that? No. Not because I don't want to have any compassion for kids in children's hospitals, but because a lot of these comics I wouldn't want kids to read. I don't think it's good for them. I think what you take in is what you put out, and taking in garbage is not healthy, especially for kids who are still growing and learning their place in the world. I don't think everything has to be wholesome, leave it to Beaver. But Jesus, it needs to stop being like gender studies, hateful politics, and I'm not going to get into that here. Needless to say, Iron Fist doesn't do any of that. It's all about cool comic characters fighting cool comic villains and actually being a hero. Here we see Taskmaster, who recently appeared in, I believe it was a Black Widow comic, where we got to see him completely emasculated as he ran away from an emasculated Black Widow. Or sorry, mixing up my words. He got completely emasculated as he ran away from an unconscious Black Widow. Black Widow's lying on the floor unconscious, and he's thinking to himself, should I finish her off? Oh no, what if she wakes up and breaks my spine? I'm paraphrasing. That's not how the dialogue went. But essentially that was the feeling of the scene of like, and he runs off. Because he was so deathly afraid that she might wake up and beat him to a pulp. Taskmaster, the guy who can take on the Avengers. And here, Danny Rand runs into him. An Avengers level villain, or of yesteryear at least. And Danny confronts him and he speaks, Taskmaster's like, here's the scene. You, Taskmaster, the deed is done. The dragon is slain, and I have his heart. Soon, they will have all the dragon hearts. You are not going to leave the Citadel with that. Who's going to stop me? And then, this is a funny thing. Another thing I wanted to point out is this character Fu, who I'm not familiar with. He's used for good comic relief. Now, he's not over the top like a Jar Jar Binks, but much in the same way that maybe the droids were in Star Wars C-3PO and R2-D2, you get these little interjected scenes of them that's kind of, it's not outrageously like, oh, ha, 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 laugh out loud funny, but it's levity to the scene. And he's like, just a little more, bit more rest, and I'll be skipping across. So he had told Danny to go ahead of him. He can't keep up. They came across this obstacle. And, he's having trouble. And in the context of the scene, when you read the book, it's cute and it's kind of funny, but it doesn't linger there. It doesn't wear out its welcome. Boom. It's just one panel, back to the fight. We don't actually see the fight. We just see Danny getting his ass kicked. And he's flying out, lands on his feet. And now you will die. And here we see Taskmaster made to be a scary villain, the way he should be. But Danny is the hero. He's not afraid. He's going to stand up to him. Everyone dies, some sooner than later. I'm confident that today is not my day. How lucky are you feeling? Why trust luck when I have skill and the will to use it? Immortal is a fallacious honorific at best. And Taskmaster is just handing his ass to him. We go back to those poles that they were hopping over, and we see why there's just big spikes. Danny's falling. And your paltry tally. Whoosh, he does the splits. Boom. Protects him. Look at this. There's even snakes down there. Jesus. May be presumptuous. I was hired to procure the dragon hearts, but my employer might pay a bonus for eliminating a nuisance like you. There you go. Oh, sorry. There goes those prematurely counted chickens again. Bam! And Danny gets a hit in, knocking Taskmaster through. It's a cool fight. Might I remind you that I am fighting you to a standstill without the use of my left hand? And then here comes Fu. Let us see how you do without your head. Chop! And he misses because Taskmaster's gone, and he gets away. And it's very fundamental old school comics. The villain gets away to fight another day. And meanwhile, we see Luke Cage is playing hide and seek with the little girl Pei. And the door rings and like, oh, look, Danny's coming home. And nope. It's Lady Bullseye and a bunch of her zombie ninjas. Look, zombie ninjas. Just, need I say more? And they're coming. The whole plot of this is they're going after all these dragons. Pei has a dragon. So she's a target. Danny said they need to let Bullseye go because they want to go protect Pei, but it's too late as we get a fight scene here. Thankfully, at least Luke Cage is on the scene, and then we get to a scene here where the little girl, actually, it's kind of funny here. She fights. She's like, "You let go of him right now, and if I don't, flying northern spearhand thrust, kaspoot." She just like does his finger strike into her eye. Arg! You have good technique, you disgusting imp. But now I'm going to squash you like an insect. What? She's like, oops, bit off more than she can chew. And then blam! And then that's where we see Danny has shown up. Pick on someone your own size. So they fight off, and Lady Bullseye, stupid character, by the way. I don't know her, actually. I don't like when they do that, things like that. Like, oh, let's make lady version of this character. You already have Bullseye. You don't need lady. That's just me. That's my own. You may not have that problem, so that's not a critique of the comic. They have some more dialogue, and it's all good and fun. And they find out, they get a visage of the, Kuan Yin, Mother of Mercy. She shows up. She kind of explains how the mortal balance is in peril, the dragons, blah, 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 heaven's burning, to be continued. And so this is Larry Hama putting on a clinic of how to write a Marvel comic. This is what a Marvel comic should be. You can see for yourself the art. I don't know this particular artist, but he's very solid. He understands how to tell a story visually. I never get lost in the fighting, which is very important in a kung fu book. You're probably buying a kung fu comic because you want to see fighting kung fu. You could follow it along very visually. The detail of the illustration is very solid. He doesn't shy away from backgrounds or detail. Even small panels like this, which is a quarter of the page. Look at how much he's drawing in a quarter panel. It blew me away in expectations, because I was expecting trash. And now, obviously, if you come into something with your bar set low, that's always helpful. But there you go. I'm going to give this 4 stars. Now, this book isn't for me. That's a final closing. But that's not a bad thing, right? I'm just being transparent. I've never been a huge Iron Fist fan, although I did recently pick up the Ed Brubaker, Matt Fraction entire run, because if anything is well written, I'll try it out. But I did enjoy this. When I say it's not for me, comics are expensive these days, $3.99, and I already buy a selection of comics. So to make it on my list is got to be tough. If this were on Unlimited Comixology, I would read the whole series, and eventually probably will when it gets there. But that's fine. This may be for you. And furthermore, you might have youngsters, kids. You might be an adult that has kids, and you're in the same situation. Like, I don't know. I don't want to have my kids read this crap. This is a book you can turn them on to. It's well done. It doesn't deal with any of the culture nonsense that's going on in the real world. It just tries to be a comic, and it succeeds. Bravo, Larry Hama. You didn't hit a home run, but a solid double, and runners in scoring position. Did I get that right, Eric Breen? Trying to do sports references here on Ash on Comics. We just fail at everything. No, I'm just kidding. So check this book out. Thank you again, Sergeant Bats, now MAGA Bats. Thank you for donating this, and I hope someone out there, you guys get enjoyment out of this book. # read good comics. I'll see you next time.